Sharon, thank you so much indeed for your time. How critical exactly are forests to the climate crisis? I mean, their destruction or indeed their preservation stroke regeneration?
Well, forests play a massive part in the carbon balance. So they are absorbers and they are emitters. But up until now, forests have been more of a sink for carbon. So you can think of them as a great big forest sponge, soaking up all that CO2. And the problem is that we've been deforesting, and the rate of deforestation has become alarming. And the problem that we have is that when you deforest an ancient forest, if you take the trees out of that system has taken a long time to lock down all that CO2. And then all of a sudden we release CO2 that's been locked down over a long period of time. Replanting new forest we don't get the same impact of that. So if we just, just replacing ancient forest with new forest, there's going to be a time lag between getting that value back. But the thing about letting this happen naturally is that we end up with native species going back, because the other issue, of course, is biodiversity, which goes hand in hand with climate change, because, of course, climate change drives loss of biodiversity.
Yeah, absolutely. The threat to biodiversity is utterly shocking. So the thing is, whenever the transition is going to be completed, and as we go through the process of the transition, whatever that might be, from fossil fuels to renewable energies to people and industries that rely on deforestation for their livelihoods, how much have we understood about the calculations of the people, the money, the industries that rely on deforestation, and how much they'll have to be accounted for when the transition happens and is then eventually completed?
Of course, deforestation is driven by industries like agriculture and product development, which drives jobs upstream as well. But the problem is that existing forest has an industry attached to it as well. And something like 1.6 billion people around the world rely on forests that exist. So this drive to deforestation is impacting those livelihoods. And at the same time, you have the existing jobs through deforestation, but then we need to create new jobs. And when we move away from the systems that are driving deforestation, the hope is that we're going to be creating new industries and new investments in things that give people a different direction and different ways of replacing that income.
Sharon, a general question, if you don't mind, about the global fight against the climate crisis. We've got COP26, the UN climate conference, happening later in the year in Glasgow. The US President Joe Biden recently increased his government's commitments to reducing emissions. You've now got the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States finally able to publish, after being suppressed since 2017, a report that Donald Trump didn't want made public, in which the EPA says for the very first time that human activity is in part responsible for the climate crisis. Are we looking still at mitigation, or do we think that we might actually be able to prevent the crisis from happening?
I think it's both. We can't take our foot off the pedal when it comes to dropping those emissions, because all the time, all the emissions that we're producing now are going to stay in the atmosphere for a very, very long time, still doing damage. So and all the emissions that we've already emitted have driven that climate change process. It started it moving. So we're in a position where we have to mitigate and prevent to keep it under control. And what's good news about this is that we need one global united effort with this. Climate change doesn't respect borders, and it's created by all of us, with some countries having more of an impact than others. And of course, the US is a big player in this, not only in producing those emissions, but is going to be a huge key in the leadership that we all need to have an impact to addressing this really urgent crisis.
Sharon, thank you so much for your time. Sharon George from Keele University in the UK.